Hi, welcome to our April 30th, 2021 Club Cubase live stream. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. I'm going to do a quick audio test. We'll make sure that everything is kind of working as expected. Hi, welcome to our April. Okay, so it sounds like audio is going through fine. So my name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or you could simply ask the questions in the live chat field. So you could type the questions in. We will be having kind of not our usual 4-hour live stream because we're doing the Zoom meetup. I'll see if I could just post the Zoom information. So if you want to actually meet in person, we'll be able to do that. Let me just come over here and see if I could paste in the Zoom information. I'll try to do this periodically throughout the live stream. So this is a chance for all of us to kind of meet in person, and you could listen to someone else speak besides myself. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I am a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I focus primarily on Steinberg products. So what we want to do here, I'm broadcasting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And it's always kind of a joy to see people throughout the throughout the world that are able to kind of join. And at around 2 hours from now, we'll kind of transition to our Zoom meetup. We decided to do this year, the last live stream of the month, and it gives us a chance to kind of meet each other and talk. And as I mentioned before, other people can speak besides me. So probably in about 2 hours, it'll be kind of an abbreviated live stream, but let's go ahead and see who is on, and I'll periodically post the link. I know some people had emailed the link. So if you're on the live stream, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us who you are, where you're from. When asking questions, if we could try to ask, not repeat the same questions over and over again, because sometimes I will be behind the number of questions that come in, so I'll apologize for that. If we could try to avoid asking the same question over and over again if you're not getting an immediate response. Also, when asking the question, if you could indicate, I see some people have done this already. I'm running Cubase Pro on Windows 11 or Cubase Pro 11 on Windows 10 or Cubase 10.5 Elements on Mac OS, Big Sur. So that information is often helpful as well. So we're going to just wait another minute or two, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But let's take a quick look, see who is on the live stream. So we see Sir Robert from Atlanta. We have Vinny from Orlando. We have Filter Freak, all right, from his 16th session. So congratulations. All right, so we have Massimo from Bologna, Italy. Okay. We have Matt Elliston from London. All right, so we have Jazz Dude, who's always has wonderful information. He helps kind of put together a lot of information for the Cubase Nation Discord. We also, if you want to search for questions that may have been covered on previous Hangouts, Jan has been kind enough to create the CubaseIndex.com site. And we also have, I'm not sure if he's on yet, but Agent K will do some moderation. So just a little thanks to all those people that help support the community. So we see Soren from Sweden. We have Neurotic Nexus. Glad that you didn't miss the live stream. We have Robbie Bowling from Dallas. All right. All right, so I see Agent K is on. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index is on. Okay. All right, so we have Joe in Austin. All right, so we have Uno from Finland, Ace Amadeus from Texas, I believe. All right, so since we have an abbreviated live stream today for the Zoom, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so question from Vinny Sabatino. Hello everyone. Windows 10, Cubase 11 Pro. I added an 816X to my 816 CSX Behringer ADA 8200. How do I chain these together? I'd like to have 8 separate stereo audio outs for monitors. ADAT chain not working. So what you need to do to have the two units be chained together is, with the FireWire, with the MR816, is you can take the FireWire out of one of the interfaces and take the FireWire out of the primary interface and connect that to the FireWire input of the secondary interface. So with FireWire interfaces, we can daisy chain unlike USB audio interfaces. Now on the 816X or the 816 CSX, if you wanted to connect and I don't have the control panel really to show on my system, but you could choose for the ADAT optical port to work as an ADAT toslink, giving 8 channels of expansion capabilities to the for when connected with something like your Behringer ADA 8200. But that same physical connector could work as a simple SPDIF connection. So you have to go into the control panel and define that as like an ADAT toslink as opposed to like a toslink SPDIF. And then once you have that, you could just take the outputs from the 88 from your Behringer unit into the MR816 into either of them. I'm not sure if that has 8 analog outs or not, but you could basically just take the connections there, but make sure that you have it set to like an ADAT as opposed to like a SPDIF toslink. All right. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we have from Bologna. Could you please explain the case of Groove Agent, the dissolve function? So let's take a look. And I think that this is not necessarily tied directly to Groove Agent, but with any kind of, any MIDI drums, it's really kind of ideal for doing MIDI drums as well. So let's come over here and take a look. So if we have an instance of Groove Agent, sometimes we may have like one MIDI track with multiple, like a kick, a snare, hi-hat. So let's say if I'm here and I just have all of my drums on one particular track, that I could, let's say I drag this pattern over. So as we do this, I will see all of my different drums in this particular one part. So this one part contains all of the different drums. As I work with this, if I wanted to split each of those sounds into their own track, their own independent track, that's when we could go to the MIDI and choose dissolve part, and we could choose to separate by pitches. So at this point, when I hit OK, what this will do is now take, and I could have my kick, my hi-hat, fills, all the different sources. When we look at it, is just going to be spread out on individual. So it's basically one note per track. So that's what the dissolve function will allow you to do. But I think that's what the dissolve. I don't know, if there's a specific dissolve function in Groove Agent, but that could work with any MIDI drum source or any MIDI track. Okay, so we could just say, okay, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Let's say I have 20 ad libs with 20 different panning settings. How to route this with parallel compression so I don't need 20 different compression panning setting on each send channel. Okay, so let's set up a quick scenario here. So let's say I have some side chaining. Example here we'll take a look at. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to, you know, have in this scenario, I have a bass and a kick, and maybe I wanted to sidechain the synth bass sound from the kick. So we'll just come here and but let's say if these are panned differently. So let's say if I just open up my automation, and so I'm not sure if we have to do anything differently just due to panning. So let's say if I do a linked panner, okay, so let's say if I have like my kick track and we'll just listen to the panning. So as I come here. Okay, so let's say if we have that now, you know, whatever source I want to pan. So I don't think you have to treat it separately. So I'm just going to open up my compressor here, and I will just take this, and I'll just set this to, let me check my stereo out there. Okay. So I will just come right over here and be able to add the sidechain input. So let's say I want it to come from the kick. So now when we do it, regardless of kind of panning, it's still going to sidechain. So I'm not sure if, you know, if you have different ad libs, you know, the panning. Okay, I'm sorry, it's with parallel compression. So let me set that up. Sorry. I just went down a whole wrong path. All right, so let's just say I just wanted to do parallel compression on a voice track. Okay, so we'll take a voice track and set up a parallel bus for it. All right, so I'm going to just, let's say we have our vocal here. Our musical history. And what I want to do is to send this to, let's send it to 2 groups. So I'm going to add 2 group channels. So we'll just come right over here. Let's add our group channels. And I'll just create that outside the folder. So we'll have group 2 and 3. So what I want to do is to go to, all right, so I will just set this up to go to groups 3 and group 4. Okay, so now when we do this, laid out on the floor,
I've got to choose what's mine and what's yours.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to send it to this bus, and I wanted this this channel here to be heavily compressed.
Cause now you're asking Beatles or Stones. Something about that just sounds so wrong.
Okay, so now I will just come here. We'll just call this the parallel. And let's just go ahead and do different pannings on this.
What is to it away to start a fight? Take
And we'll just kind of open this up. So regardless of the panning, when it's being sent to two groups,
just leave it alone.
still being kind of heavily compressed.
You still love when I played Hey Jude.
Regardless of where the panning is. So I just have this being sent to two groups. One of the groups is doing kind of our parallel, and then this one, this is kind of like, you know, our normal group, and then this group here is being sent and heavily squashed. So it doesn't seem like the panning is affecting that. So I'm not sure if you have it set up another way. So, but let me know if I misunderstood. Sorry for going down the wrong path of sidechaining initially. Excuse me. All right. Okay, so so we have a question. I have a large choral SATB pieces that's almost done. Producer wants voiceovers at the start and end. Can you show us an example with ducking? Okay, so let's say if I wanted to do, so let's say if I wanted the, let me see if I'll just do a quick, like, let's say if I have ducking on a 2-track here. Okay, so let's say I have maybe like a music bed here of this jazz piece, and I wanted to duck with maybe a, I'll just do like a quick like voiceover type track. And I want to duck according, you know, based on the actual file of another file. So I would just come, let's import an audio file, and I'll just do some, okay, so I'll just kind of split and move these over. Okay, so let's say now I just wanted to have any time that the dialogue track comes in here, I wanted this track to be ducked. So to set that up, I could, on the track that you want ducked, we could enable just a compressor. So just like we were doing in the previous example, so let's go to maybe our standard compressor, and you could do this with the plug-in version as well. So if this is, so let's go to our compressor here. We'll show you in the plug-in version. And I wanted this to be heavily compressed every time this track comes in. So I'm going to activate the sidechaining, and by clicking on this icon here. And then I could click on the sidechain input source, and I can say, okay, this is going to be coming from audio 1. So now we'll have kind of our backing track, and every time that this voiceover track comes in, this track will get compressed.
So Scott Dixon joining us now, and this is, I interviewed you in Victor Lane for Sports Center just moments after you'd won the race in the championship. And I asked you a question.
I was going to stop you here. The music get louder.
weren't ready to answer. I'm going to ask you now. That we've had a little while, which is, I look at this list of all-time open wheel champions, and you know you've moved.
You can adjust a release.
Group of 3, which was a.
So that's kind of really all you have to do for that is the track that you want to duck, put a compressor, activate the sidechain, and then set the other track that you want to do deducting as the sidechain input. And that should just kind of take care of it for you. Let me just turn this off.
Too much, but you know, I feel very privileged for one to be. You know,
so now, as soon as the voiceover stops, and that's really kind of all you had to do to set up kind of a ducking scenario using sidechain compression. Okay, so it says I printed out a guitar tab of a Midi part, winded up everything on one string in the tab. What did I do wrong? How can I get the notes in a guitar box on several strings? Okay, so let's just jump back. I think we have some stuff that we could use in this project. Let me try one other one. It may have something. Let's see if this part might work. So if I wanted to do this in guitar tab, so when we come over here, let's go to the score editor. All right, so if I wanted this in tablature, I would just double click to the left here and open up like the staff settings. Let's go to the tablature mode, and at this point, you know, we could, I'm not sure if your MIDI information is, you know, if you have it on MIDI channels 1 through 6. But now as we, so let's say if we have this. So now we could see the guitar tabs here. And if I wanted to, let's say, just print this out. So let's say if I wanted just a guitar tab. So we could do your standard tuning here. So let's say if I wanted to print to, let's see if I could just print it to a PDF. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look at it. So here's the PDF. So it looked like everything kind of printed out. So you could check, you know, in the program if you wanted to. You know, I'm not sure if you have MIDI channel 1 through 6 unchecked or unchecked, but this is kind of the settings that I did to make the guitar tab show on all strings. So let me know if that's kind of how you had it set up, Soren. Excuse me, just clear my throat. All right. All right, great to see John Costigan on the live stream. Okay. Okay, so we have, hi Greg, hope you and your family are well. Could you please show how to create and save to external drive a new Groove Agent kit and Hallian sounds without overwriting or erasing factory sounds? All right, so let's say if I am here and I want to record, I'll add a new audio track here. Okay, and I'll just create some kind of blank audio files. Okay, so now I have a series of audio files. I wanted to go to my VST instruments. Let's say if I go to Groove Agent or Groove Agent SE, it'll kind of function the same way. I'll drag all of these samples that I have. I'm just going to drag them. And if I put it on 3, it'll just kind of automatically map those particular samples to the different pads. And then I right click and I just choose to export kit with samples. So at this point, you could just click on the little plus sign and just choose exactly where you want those kits to be saved to. So again, just, you could just create a new folder, on any drive that's connected to your system. Now, let's say if I wanted to do that for Hallian. Okay, so I will come over here. Let's go to edit. So there's samples here. So I'll drag all these files. I'll just maybe drag them to. Okay, so let's say if I have these and I wanted to save this as my preset. At this, we would just kind of, so you just drag those in, and then we could just choose to export. And then you could just export the program as a VST, and you could export the samples directly to a different drive here. So just kind of select kind of the hierarchy here, right click, and then you could choose where to do it inside of Hallian as well. Okay, so question. On my new Apple M1 computer and the new Cubase update runs fine, but I'm having a hard time trying to install my QC and PD controllers. So I'm not sure if I don't have an M1 processor, but those have been discontinued, I think, for 7-ish years. So they may not be working or compatible with the M1 processors. So I'm not. I could, maybe check with a friend or check with the office to see if they have those working. So I'm not sure if it's an M1 thing or just the operating system, but you may have to download. Let's see if there's if there's a latest update. All right, we'll just see if there's Just looking at release notes. So I'm not sure if you had the latest version of it. So it does say that it is. This may have been written before the CPUs, but make sure that you have the 1.1.4 because this, I don't think it's going to be like necessarily a CPU issue, but it could be if you jumped from previous operating systems that you might need the 1.14 update. I wouldn't worry so much about I think it's going to be more contingent upon the OS than the processor. And this was probably written before M1 processors were released, but I'm not sure if, but if you have that, I could see if I could get a clarification. But they have been discontinued for a number of years. So. And just seeing, it says, my other MacBook Pro is running on Big Sur with no problem. CMC ports don't appear. Am I doing something wrong? Are these drivers not running on Rosetta? So I think it should be running on Rosetta. But also make sure that you have, if you're running, which version of Cubase that you're running as well. So, there's a lot of Rosetta support that went into like 11.02, which was released about 2 weeks ago. Okay, so we see Tommy just says, thanks for help with the last live stream. It was helpful for him. That's great. All right, let me my chat field will occasionally jump on me, so apologize for that. All right, so we see a question. Good morning from India. How to custom design macros for common tasks, touchscreen displays as Junkie XL for fast searching and editing, templates and scoring. So, what a macro is, and, sometimes it's difficult to, we can show you kind of what a macro is. And what a macro is going to be just defining, a series of keyboard shortcuts. So when you see a lot of composers rigs like Junkies or, Hands or Harry Gregson Williams, a lot of these guys will have, really comprehensive macros that are set up. So, if you wanted to, come over here, and what a macro is a series of keyboard shortcuts. So if you find yourself, I just wanted to, hide, let's see if we could, find a macro here. So like, if you wanted to move an event 1 second away, instead of having to do all of these steps manually one by one, we could just trigger a macro that would execute all of these different key commands. Now, building these macros, you could use combinations of logical or project logical editors, and you could have macros that, run other macros. And what many people do when you see Tom working is, he's going to be, then he can fire off their touch screens, and a touch screen, instead of, hitting a keyboard shortcut to execute a macro, you could assign under the macro key command category. And the key commands are under the edit menu. These can then be triggered from a keyboard shortcut or a touch screen that's basically mimicking a keyboard or a MIDI message. So, but if there's like a particular macro that you want me to show you how to make, we could do that. But that kind of should hopefully give you a sense of, how the macros will function. All right, so I'm going to post the Zoom link one more time here. Let's see. Still have it. So it'd be great to see everyone on the Zoom, and we'll start that in about an hour and 24 minutes. It's already going by so fast. All right, so we have Steven checking in from Buffalo, New York. Thanks for joining us. And Sal from Florida. We're glad you can make it. Hope I was able to help you out right before. All right, so we have Peter from Maine. All right, and we have Pablo from Galicia, España. And we have Sofia, Bulgaria. on the live stream. And Sisay from Minnesota. Okay, so we have it says, "Hey, I'm from the UK. Just started watching these. I have so many questions. Thumbs up." I'm Kirk McCrae, by the way. So welcome. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. All right, so we have a question from Stephen McCormick. Could you please talk about using track archives to streamline bringing pre-built track groups into a template? So let's say I have a project and I really liked how, just open one up here. So let's say I really liked how the drums came off in this project, and maybe I wanted to start off the next project with the same volumes, the same inserts as all of my drums. So I'm going to select all of my drum tracks. And sometimes when you do this, you realize that you may want to, before saving a track archive, is just to take the actual media files and maybe not have the actual audio file. So this will have all of my inserts, my volume, panning, phase, all of that stored. So if I wanted to save this as a track archive, what I could do is I would just export selected tracks. And I will call this, drum kit archive. And sometimes, so it's exporting selected tracks. So I'm going to export this, save it. And why I kind of did the drums is I wanted kind of all the drum settings, but maybe not necessarily the drum audio files from this. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the project here. And what I want to do is to import a track archive. So you export selected tracks and you import a track archive. So now that I'm going to go to my desktop, and we call this our drum kit archive. I'll get presented with this. I'll select all the files, hit OK. And now all of the files that I had set up, so my drums with my EQs, panning, and volume control have all been translated over. So that's how you could use track archives to kind of, work with kind of a known starting off point. Okay, so we have John Barry from Old England and Noah from Pennsylvania. I have lots of family in Pennsylvania. All right. All right, so we also see George from Athens, Greece. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Chris Nielsen from Asnet, Massachusetts. All right, and we have Tony Trunzo from Australia. It's one of my favorite vacation spots I ever went to. All right, and I see Taylor from Pine Grove. Okay, so I see from Taylor, after updating to 11.02, I am unable to pin my shortcut to the taskbar. Is there something special I need to do? The last version pinned without any problems. I didn't have any problems on my studio computer, but I'm on a Mac. I don't think there's anything special that you would have to do to pin it to the taskbar, but I could take another look at it. If you want to send me a quick email, Taylor, or I'd be happy to kind of look into it, but I don't think there's anything special. Maybe it was seeing that Cubase 11 might have been already pinned. So I'm not sure if you removed the previous, 1101 before pinning 1102. So maybe it's something like that. All right. So we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas, and he's always generous enough to give out virtual ice cream on the live streams. So it's our incentive to behave well. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to change the location of VSTs windows from their file location without causing any disruptions in Cubase? So if VST2s, I think you could do that. And as long as you go to the plugin manager and the plugin is accessible. So when you come here, VST3 plugins kind of by design go into a common folder to alleviate this, where, plugins can be just, scattered on any hard drive. And, we often will have people put their Windows, on Windows operating system. They just put, their, Windows system folder, and then they run into every driver that they have in their computer can be immediately accessed as in their VST plugins, and it could cause all sorts of problems. So usually the VST, the plugin is very small, and doesn't need to be migrated. Often what you could do is, there are utilities if it's like a plugin that has a lot of content. Most plugins would have a way, if there's kind of a significant amount of samples or, content with the plugin that, most companies would give you a way to move all of that content to a new location. Like the utility that Steinberg uses to do this is the library manager. So you can say, I want to take all my Cubase content and just move it to a different hard drive or a different folder so that the plugins can be found, but the content it accesses can be tied with that program to any location. So, so if you could let us know if you need to if it's just for the content or you need the actual plugin to be moved for some reason. So, and again, it depends on VST2 or VST3. All right, Jan with his Cubase, his fancy CubaseIndex.com gets the first virtual ice cream from Michael Teams. Congratulations. All right. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we have James from Pylon Records in LA. Welcome and thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from Chris. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to map one of the CC121 function keys to the listen mode in the mixer? So let's go ahead and let me just find the function. I think we might be able to do this. Okay, so I think it's just going to be, so let's say I have this track selected. So let's get to the CC121. And I think it's going to be maybe under Edit. And then you'll see Listen. So now I'm just hitting my function 1 key, and that's activating the listen for that particular channel. So if you wanted to listen to this, I'll revert this. So let's say if I'm listening and I wanted to apply the listen. So if we solo, let's say a track, but now if I could dim the other tracks just by hitting that function key. So we can set the listen dim amount. So now we can have the bass up, but the other tracks kind of just dimmed down. So, and again, to do that, just go to your studio setup, select a CC121, go to the function, look under category edit, and then command. It just kind of, you could just do a quick search for listen. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream. So just see question, can the sequence and or arpeggios you programmed on Retrolog transmit all the actual MIDI notes to the MIDI grid so that maybe we can use it with other instruments? So I don't think the Retrolog one is designed to do that. So it might be just kind of fixed, but let's take a look to see if we could find something. All right, so just we'll try some of the new Neon Drifts library and see if we can find one that has. Okay, so I'm just going to hold one note, and we have the arpeggiator here, so let's take a look at it. Okay, so let's say it looks like if we just kind of come over here, I could hit record. And then I will turn that off, and you see this little MIDI icon. We drag that out. And then and now as we look at it, we could just see the arpeggiation there. So you could just click on record, and then kind of whatever, let's say if I just kind of play a chord now. All right, so turn that off. You see this little MIDI light indicate, and we can now just drag that directly into our project window. So now when we look at it, it's as if we kind of just played all the different components. So give that a try. Just try to click on the record. And then you could just simply, drag, once it's finished recording, drag, you'll see the little MIDI icon here. So drag that MIDI data onto the project window. Okay, so just as when recording MIDI tracks in Yamaha Genos and after editing in Cubase, what do I need to do in order for Genos to play back as MIDI tracks? Thanks. So once you've recorded into Cubase, sometimes I know the Genos is like a really slick kind of arranger keyboard. So a lot of the kind of magic of the arranger keyboards isn't transmitted out. So, you may play a chord and it's kind of doing like a whole band arrangement. So the instrument itself may just transmit the chord out and not be able to transmit all the different parts that are being generated from that chord. So that's how a lot of arranger workstations work. I don't have a Genos to actually test it. So you may just have to, record that chord, and when the chord is played back, that it will generate kind of the, audio accompanied parts for you. But that may not, those individual parts that are generated are probably not going to be transmitted out. Okay. just. Okay, so I think I missed one question. Sorry. I saw a response to it from Jazz Dude. Thank you for that. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to have the control room panel break out so I could drag it to my second monitor? So the control room, is kind of, we'll see it kind of fixed here. But if you wanted to, like, occasionally I have people who want to see metering and control room. But now when I come, I could just go to your studio menu, and now you could see the control room set up as kind of an independent window, and this could be moved freely onto secondary screens if you want. Okay. Thanks for all the great questions. If you learned something new, make sure you hit the like button. All right, great to see Millard Brown on the live stream. All right, so my chat field jumped on me. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, I'm using the Nectar Impact as a MIDI controller. Is there any way to pre-map the CCs, or do I have to map CC1 and wiggle, etc.? So, if you wanted to remap the CCs that the Nectar Impact is transmitting, that's going to be done probably in the controller itself. So I'm not sure if you wanted to remap it based on a controller itself. So if that's what you want to do, you'd have to kind of remap it within the Nectar as to what CCs are being transmitted by what knob. But if I'm misunderstanding, just let me know. Okay, Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button or you get no ice cream. So. Okay, so we just have a question. Hi, Greg. Where is the setting, or how do I let Cubase 10.5 know that I have external hard drives, and where to set their folder path so Cubase can find my custom Groove Agent and Hallian sounds? So really all you have to do is you could go into your media bay and go to you see this computer, and you say, I want it to go to this hard drive, and select your drive here, and then you could have Cubase, the media bay in Cubase, just automatically search throughout that drive or specific folders on that drive for your samples, presets, loops, and Cubase relevant files. All right, so just see from Full Tank that I promised to answer one of his questions, but I'm not sure if it was sent in advance or if it was on the live stream here. I don't see it, but let me know. If I missed it, just ask the question again. Sorry about that. All right, so we see just a nice comment from Christian D68. Silent viewers since January. I learned so much with you. So happy to be in the Cubase Tips Academy. I love it. Thanks to Greg and all the Dream Team. So thanks for the kind words, and thanks for coming out of your silent viewership. So And hope to see you on more live streams. If you have questions, let me know. Okay, so just see, okay, so you see the question we had from, I think this is in the comments from the last live stream. I need to export many different tracks. Each of these tracks are in different lengths. Okay, so if I wanted to do this, let's go ahead, open up. So let's say I have a number of different dialogue tracks in my project and I needed these to be exported. So let's say
I interviewed him, Victor, and have you had a chance to think about this?
And these are all just kind of broken down. Maybe this is one interview and I wanted to now export these all as separate files through the export audio mixdown. So if I wanted to do that, one of the things we could do is I have a marker track that's activated. And I created a macro. So let's look at the macro. So I think I wanted to do a cycle marker based on the event length. So I just set up transport locators to selection. And then the next step I had was marker, insert, and name cycle marker. So once I run that macro, I could just come here and I will choose so I'm going to execute the macro and I'm just going to come here and say cycle marker to event length. So this window pops up. I'm just going to give it a name. Okay, let's go to the next one. And then I could just kind of run this macro on each of these in case I haven't named the cycle marker. So again, let's come here. We'll just do this like 2 or 3 more times. So just go to edit to macros. And now I'll just say cycle marker to event length. And we'll do it one more time here. And I'll just call this full tank. So now if I wanted to export, whether this is a multi-track or single tracks, I could just come right over here and we do our export audio mixdown. I could do, okay, I want these to be stereo files. I want it to be based on the cycle markers. And we could just select all of the cycle markers. We could actually have just the naming conventions where I could say I want the cycle marker name as the audio file. And then I'll just say I want these to, when I do an export audio mixdown, I'm going to create a new audio track. Let's add that to the queue. And I say start queue export. And it'll just kind of go through and export each of these files, and it'll create new audio tracks of, audio that was kind of one contiguous file that's now been split up. And we'll go take a look, and here's our new audio files. They could be put to different folders, so different lengths. So once you have kind of like a cycle marker for the space, that cycle marker name can be carried over directly into the audio file. Okay, so we have Henry Brown's saying hi from Vancouver. Thanks for joining us. And we have Dan Butler from Oklahoma. All right, so we have David from La Rioja, España. Thanks for joining us. And Christopher from Connecticut. And I think it's Eyal from New York. Okay, so just see the broken pitch wheel on my keyboard makes all MIDI input go out of tune. Is there a way to make Cubase ignore all incoming pitch data from one particular MIDI source for all channels and projects? All you have to do is come right over here, go to Preferences, and go to MIDI Filter. And at this point, you could choose just to filter out the recording of MIDI pitch bend. So that's all you had to do. And if your pitch bend wheel is broken, which happens a lot on MIDI controllers, then it'll just not record any pitch bend data. Okay, so we just have a question. Hi, Greg. Can you show me which is your Beatles Stones project color settings? So I'll just open up the project here, and we'll take a look. Okay, so I got to open up my colors. This is just my color setting, so I think it's just the default colors, so nothing too exciting. So that's kind of all the colors I'm using, so just the default ones. Yeah, maybe I'm just using the colors more. Okay. Okay, so I see a comment from Christian. This is vocal effects. Not sure if that's a particular question. But good, move on. All right, so question. I'm using a Yamaha Clavinova CBP70 keyboard, but have no modulation wheel. What is the easiest way to add one? So you probably, you might be able to have I'm not sure if there's an expression input, but you could map an expression pedal if there's an expression input on that particular keyboard. I'm not sure if there is, but that could be mapped to modulation. Otherwise, maybe getting a little, many third-party little MIDI controllers. Sometimes you may be able to get like a MIDI fader box, like 8 faders, and have one of those do, your modulation on it. So. Okay, so we have question 2, part of Retrolog question. Can you patch out what you've created, arpeggiator sequencer to external keyboard, kind of like Apache, etc.? So I think we covered that already. So yeah, you can just go to the instrument and go to your Retrolog and go into the settings here, and once we have. This is just to record, and then you could just drag that file out, and you could copy that to any other MIDI track. Okay, so I just see verification from Tommy. In response to earlier, it's mainly for moving the plugins themselves, as I have over 14 different locations allocated for each developer with my third-party plugins in the plugin manager. So yeah, I mean, it could depend if it's, VST 2 or 3, but, so you could definitely kind of consolidate if you want, or, spread them out as you want. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to install a Roland Integra 7 to Cubase 11 Pro as a MIDI device and see all the sound banks and set different output buses? So, it could be done. I'm not sure. We don't create any of the MIDI device manager presets. Those are generally, defined when you go to, let's say, your MIDI port setup. You could, let's say if we go to, so we'll go to more options under studio, and we'll go to your MIDI device manager. So I don't think that there's an Integra 7 in here, but you could, simply come over here, say, okay, I want to install a device. We'll define new, and if you really wanted to, you could create your own patches and patch maps. So say, okay, I want my Integra from 1 through MIDI channels. I want it to be these MIDI channels, and when you hit OK, you could open that device, and then if you wanted to go to your patch banks, you could type these in. You could see if Roland has created a device manager. So that would do all the patch maps. You could make, editors if you wanted to. So I'm not sure if that would set the different output buses, if that's possible via MIDI messages. A lot of tone modules won't allow you to do that via MIDI. It's just kind of done internally. So, but you may have to just kind of type in the patches, or you could use Excel often to kind of get patch lists. But many companies will just do patch lists and release it as part of the launch of a product. So you could check on Roland to do that. And maybe there's, if there's a Integra, like a Roland user group, maybe someone else would want to split the work with you, and you could possibly share if you don't want to do it all yourself. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to modulate a parameter on a plugin via velocity on MIDI track or incoming gain level, like some contact instrument control, reverb level via velocity? So let's take a look, and if I wanted to go over here to, let's say my MIDI insert. So generally that's going to be kind of handled within the capabilities of the instrument. But let's say if I wanted to go to, let's say the LFO tool, the auto LFO. Let's see if this could be triggered just via velocity. So this is going to take, I could take incoming controller messages, but not necessarily, the velocity to trigger. But generally, as stuff is going to be open, that's going to be more, within the instrument itself. You could do it with controllers using the auto LFO tool, or you could just simply use it, with controllers, but not based on velocity from the auto LFO tool. But a lot of times that's going to be just kind of handled how the plugin is designed to handle that. But if you could switch it to a controller message, you could probably do it. All right, so we just see from just a nice comment. Hi, Greg. Thanks so much for the incredible information you give us every week. It makes life so much easier the next morning at work. That's great. Okay, so I just see, thank you for the retrolog answer. After exporting a sample track into Pad Shop, how can I save those settings but not the actual sample so that I can use those settings for another sample? You know, really all you have to do inside of Pad Shop, you know, is, so let's take a look at it, but you could just drag over. So I'll come over here to Pad Shop. All right, so let's say now I'm triggering a Pad Shop sound, and I'll just unmute it. Okay, so you know, to take any other sample, if you wanted to, you know, so it's pretty dynamic. So if I just wanted to come here, you know, to Pad Shop, I could just keep all those settings and drag a new sample over to it. And that's kind of really all you'd have to do. So all the settings would be retained, but you just kind of drag the new sample in. So you don't necessarily have to save one without a sample, but you could just, you know, simply come right over here and be able to just take and, you know, trigger new sounds that way. So let me know if that works for you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and post the live stream link. And if you've learned something new, or make sure that you subscribe to the channel or directly and hit the like button so we could continue to do these things. All right, we see hello from Greece. How can I create different mix downs? Let's say one guitar plus vocal and two piano plus guitar with the multiple mix down function. I couldn't understand it. Thanks in advance. So, you know, currently what we could do if you want to do kind of your mix down function is, you know, one of the ways that you could kind of treat this, it's not really designed for like alternate tracks within a mix, but more you know, multiple formats from the same mix. But, you know, there are some ways. Let's say if I do my export audio mix down, if we just wanted to come over here, you know, we could, you know, you could choose to mute what tracks that you don't want into and save that as a mixdown cue. So, you know, it's not really set up currently. And I know I've had discussions with, you know, some of the development team of, okay, I need to mix down these files and not this. I need an alternate mix or music -1 for each of the players. So I think we'll maybe see that coming. I know that the input has gotten there, but now it's kind of designed to take the same mix and to export it to multiple formats instead of multiple mixes to the same format. But I think we'll see this as kind of maybe a version 1 and more stuff coming soon. So I just see, is there a shortcut for deactivating insert, not bypass? So I'm not sure if there is. I think we've looked for this. So yeah, so there isn't a keyboard shortcut, but if you have a number, let's say number like a track with a number of inserts on it, You know, I think if you just go to the inserts, and it's not a keyboard shortcut, I realize, but so, and I think it's Alt or Option. No, sorry. I'll try. Let me just go to the mix console view here. All right, so if I just wanted to come here to these, so as we just kind of come here, it's just going to be a modifier key. So I don't think that there's a way to actually just do, you know, to deactivate from a keyboard shortcut currently, but I'll mention that again. But I think there's, if we come over here, that you could choose to, so that's bypassing all of the inserts there. So, but I think you'd have to do it with kind of the keyboard shortcut just to deactivate. So remember, or with the modifier key. All right, so we have Mr. Robot checking in from the UK. Okay, so we just see from Full Tank, thank you, Greg. I should have mentioned I have Cubase 10, not 11. So the same functionality will work in Cubase 10 with the marker tracks, or the cycle markers on exporting. Okay, so it says we have a question. I have Cubase 10.5 on Windows 10 Pro. Just a curious one, in your last video you spoke about latency. I recorded vocals and had latency tracking, so disabled VSTs and yet still latency. So there's always going to be latency. Adding a bunch of VSTs can, you know, increase the latency, but it doesn't negate it. So, you know, make sure that when you're doing this, that, you know, you go and, you know, if you wanted to monitor through, you know, the different effects, you could, you know, if you just wanted to go direct in without monitoring with effects on most audio interfaces, you could just do the direct monitoring, and that will pass the input signal directly to the output signal. On the Mac OS, you may have to do it within the control panel for the operating system for non-Steinberg interfaces. But there's always going to be some latency, and it's, you know, you could choose not to, you know, increase your latency by turning off plugins. And the biggest thing on latency is just to make sure that when you go into your audio system, select your interface, go to your control panel, and, you know, adjust your buffer size. So the smaller the buffer size, the harder the computer works. The larger the buffer size, the more latency, as well as, you know, but it is easier for your computer to work. Okay, so we have a question. Is there an undo feature when creating MIDI device panels for controller external MIDI instruments, aka mixer maps? If not, any advice on how best to create them? So if you wanted to go to we'll come over here, let's say to our MIDI device manager. So we'll go to more options, to MIDI device manager. And I think I had one started from a previous live stream when Chris St. Aubin of the Cubase Users Facebook group fame. I'll come over here. Let's open up. Or I'll just start from scratch here. So let's do let's say with my Integra that we started just a couple minutes ago. So I'm going to choose to open the device. I'll come over here to channel 1 and let's add a panel. So I could choose whether I want this to be a general size or inspector size. I'll choose inspector size. At this point, we could say I want a fader. So I'm going to drag a fader over. I want to click on create. I want this to be a volume. And I want this to be, MIDI CC 7. So, and then I could just double click here and I'll just say this is volume. I want it to go to knobs and let's say I want this knob and let's create. And we want this to do panning. So we'll say MIDI CC 10. And I want this to default to 63. And let's give this a pan. So let's say as I've kind of gone through here, I wanted to now, and if I had moved this over, there is unlimited. I could just hit, Control or Command Z and Control Command Shift Z. And now I could just kind of add these different components. If I wanted these to be visually aligned, I could select both of them, right click and say align to left-hand side or align centers. And so once I've done this on my Integra, and I could put more knobs and I could put, text and background colors and switches. So we could do all of this and I'll save that. So when I go to add a MIDI track, we'll add our track and we could just choose, we'll see our, should see the Integra somewhere. Okay, so I see my Integra. We want to tell what port it's connected to, and we can define that in the MIDI device manager. And so now when I go to open up our device, set it to the correct MIDI channel, and now I could have my device manager and I could edit and do all of these functions and also just see it in my device panel here as well. So let's say and now I could have my own kind of built-in editor for, maybe this is a reverb or a filter or brightness, resonance, these could be whatever MIDI messages or MIDI CCs are needed. All right, so if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you hit the like button. But, it looks like there are the undo functions on creating the device panels. Okay, and this is just maybe a clarification on the latency question. It says, if I set up a new track to do vocals with VST, it works, but the track that had the latency continued latency even without any VST. It seems to affect just the one track. So maybe, sometimes some plugins don't report their latency correctly. So, but many, maybe it's something like that, but if you could let me know if it's a VST instrument or VST plugins. Okay, so let's see a question from Boy Wonder. Does Cubase still require a E-licenser, and does the virtual instruments require an E-licenser to be used in other DAWs? So our virtual instruments are sold separately, can be all run off of a soft E-licenser. So you don't have to have a USB E-licenser. They will work on a USB E-licenser, but it's just the Nuendo family, Cubase Artist, Cubase Pro, and Wavelab Pro that require the USB E-licenser. All the other instruments will require, can run off the USB E-licenser or the soft E-licenser. All right, so we see Air Der Lodge or Lage finally made it for the first time. Welcome to the live stream. Okay, we have a question. In preference, record MIDI when we use ASIO latency active by default option. Could you please go through that window, explain what the settings should be, please? All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so, when let's make sure I have so generally I tend to leave these, at the default values. I haven't really come across, so, some of the latency, like on MIDI through processing, that could be with your MIDI plugins. But generally, I leave these unchecked. And I haven't really had the need. And I think sometimes this could be like when working like with external MIDI devices, that this may have more of an impact versus VST instruments. So... and that way, if you're recording like external instruments, that could be compensated for. But I could do some more research on that if you want to send me a quick email. Okay, just reading through some comments here. Okay, so I just see from her, Der Lage or Lodge, and just kind of... Okay, maybe this with the... in relation to the Discord channel. Okay, so we're just seeing someone about their Cubase Pro 11, probably the upgrade for the 40% discount. So make sure, I think that will be going away pretty soon. Okay, so I know we had some questions sent in, and we'll be transitioning over to the Zoom meetup for everyone that wants to join us. Okay, so let's go ahead and some of the questions that were mailed in advance. I'll get to those. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Okay, so we have a question. How do I make Cubase use a specific input on an aggregate device for a specific piece of hardware every time? When other external equipment, since external effects is not powered on, or powered on in a different order, the aggregate device input numbers change, so I have to reassign the inputs every time. So I think that's kind of how the aggregate devices work. The one thing that I would try to do, if you go to the audio connections, and let's say you've set up your external effects, like let's say you have your Bricasti, and you're saying, okay, it's connected to this input and this output. And I realize it's going to be probably stereo or higher. But try clicking on favorites, and then once we could just add a favorites for it, and then you should be able to just recall. So let's say if I'm here, I'm going to remove the external effects. I can now just go to my Bricasti, and as we kind of work with that you could just, recall the favorites that you want. So, try doing that. So say we want to add an external effect. I'll just make it mono and mono here. So, you should be able to just, come right over here and just try adding it to the favorites and see if that works. But sometimes Core Audio will just kind of reorganize your different audio interfaces, and it's just kind of what Core Audio does, unfortunately, with aggregate devices. Okay, so you see a question from, I think is Marcini. Hi, Greg. Hope you can help. Is there a way to get Cubase Artist 11 to select the same MIDI controller every time I open up a new instrument track, i.e. my Akai Advanced 61? So, generally, Cubase will default to any MIDI tracks going to the all MIDI inputs. So I'm not sure if your Akai should be included in that. So, your Akai should be able to pass the MIDI data, but that's kind of the default status. But if you wanted to just select your Akai here, so I'm not sure if there's another MIDI device that's maybe transmitting, extra MIDI information, or, sometimes I have it where I'll be sequencing something and I have my virtual, my electronic drum kit, and my son will just come and start hitting the kit while I'm sequencing. And I realize that you may want to filter that out. So, but if you only wanted to have specific inputs, like only the Akai in all MIDI inputs, go to your studio setup, and go to your MIDI port setup. And here, let's say if I have my Nectar, I can say I only want the Nectar to be in, as an available option in all MIDI inputs. So it's always going to be going directly to my, Nectar or your Akai controller. But generally, it doesn't seem to be an issue as long as the MIDI is communicating in. So if there's a reason that you wanted to filter out other MIDI, just go to that again and disable in all MIDI inputs. Okay, so we had a question. I came across a strange situation happening in Cubase when recording 44K 16-bit. I just recorded a silence track in 44K 16-bit, and in playback, I see the digital meter register small spikes, but not audible, only visible in a meter, and absolutely no noise floor. Then I recorded a silence track at 24-bit, 44K 24-bit, and in playback, I hear the noise floor and no peaks, digital peaks. Again, these peaks are not audible, only visible. And he was kind enough to attach the files. I tried it in 32 and 64-bit float, same issue. Says, I do not have this issue running Cubase 8, running 10.5 now, but I checked the same test across Cubase 9.5 and 10, and the same issue when recording 16-bit. Audio is played back through a Mytek 8x192 through a manually backbone transfer console, and the files are captures in Burl ADC, and Burl is the master clock, a very short mastering chain, all top of the line, cables, wiring, etc. I did extensive tests today, and the chain is solid. Any thoughts? So let's go ahead and take a look, and he was kind enough to send the files, and we'll take a look at it here. And so I'll open up, let's say, just let's activate the project first. That would help. Okay, so let's say I have my meters here, and I'm just going to open up my control room. We'll look at 2 sets of meters, maybe supervision. So as we play back the file, just solo the 16-bit version of it. So we can see kind of this little... okay, so we'll plays back, and I'll just put it in a loop. So we see it kind of go like just little peaks, like probably minus 70 dB at 16-bit, and it kind of switches between the left. So let's say left, so 2 on the left, and like 2 on the right, or so it's like left, left, right, left, right. Okay, and now let's go look at the 24-bit file. And here we can see just a little bit of the noise floor, but this is going to be consistent between the levels, and no kind of spikes at all. So I don't really know what would cause that, unless it's, I would try to do like, maybe, switch the clock. It could be maybe something that's really designed for 24-bit where no one has tested it with 16-bit, or maybe there's a clock fluctuation. I find it odd too. So I'm not sure, if, and, when you're doing it through the MyTech, if it's, if you get the same thing, like if you just, patch the MyTech in and out of itself, if you get the same exact results, that would be, so I'm not sure how the input source, so it says manually backbone transfer console to files captures, I would try to take out any of the different sources. It could be that something just wasn't really so designed for 16-bit. And I've seen some that happen sometimes where, all the engineering, all the use cases is everything's in 24-bit and no one's recording at 16-bit. So stuff like this could kind of slip by. But it seems like, kind of almost like a weird, it's a pretty steady tempo as it does it. So that would, I would just try every possible permutation and take each source out and see if you see any difference with that, and looking at this, when we see the phase here, we only see these little phase spikes, and that looks, kind of slightly out of phase, whereas this is we see the phase representation, we see some frequencies here, the room noise. So it's weird that the room noise isn't kind of being captured at 16-bit as well. So I would try to take one component out at a time and see if you could find, something that may be the culprit, or you just choose not to record it 16-bit. Okay, so I have a question. I have a question regarding the zone visibility in Cubase 11 Pro. I've set up my visibility zones according to the attached pictures. I always want the group tracks along with the stereo out main bus to the far right and all instrument tracks to the left. I find it tedious to set this up in every single project. Is there a way to make the group tracks always be located on the right as default? So when you're doing this, if you're not familiar with this concept, let's say if we have a number of audio tracks, and let's add, let's go to the bottom here and set, a number of group tracks. Okay, so when I go to my mix console, if I want my groups to always be anchored to the right-hand side, we could do this, trick with the, visibility zones. So I'm going to select, my groups here, and let's move them all to the right. So, you could select multiple ones. If you didn't want to have to do this every time, just save a template with, your group tracks anchored. But, you don't have to go through and do this one by one as well. So if I just wanted all my groups to be anchored, just select here in the visibility in the zones tab. And you could do that kind of globally. But this is why people will often set up templates to do this. And we also had a question about this mailed in right before the live stream. Let me see if I could get it here in my email box. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Again, if you've learned something new, make sure that you actually hit the like button, or if you like what we're doing. And we'll have another live stream on Tuesday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. All right, so it says I have Cubase 11 Pro on my Mac. I have a supervision question about visually detecting phasing issues. I understand the left and right channels are not in correct phase. They can cancel out and decrease the overall dB. Normally, I could toggle between stereo and mono and watch the peak meter for any changes caused by phasing issues. But that could get tedious. Does the new supervision tool provide a better way to determine phasing issues without having to toggle between stereo and mono like I described? Okay, so let's just set up, I'll do a new project here, and we'll just do maybe a quick test tone to see if we could show this. I'm going to add a stereo audio track. And let's say on my input channel, I'm going to put just a test tone. And it's good. Just put some white noise. Okay, I'm going to turn the control room down because no one wants to hear this. All right, so. Okay, so let's say I want to come here and record. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the plugin off, and let me just check my connections here quickly. Okay, so now we're going to see, and we'll open up kind of our phase. Let's say just a new instance of supervision. And I just wanted to see, it's at a level. Let's look at phase. So we'll go to our phase scope. All right. We just try maybe with a different project here. This might do the trick. All right, so when we look at our phase here, we can see that, when we look at our phase, we're going to see, more vertical orientation. But what I want to do now is to split this track. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to convert this to 2 mono files. Okay, so now we're going to mute our original track and we have our left and right channels split. And then what I'm going to do is to take this track, my right track, and I'm going to just go to the processes. And I'll just make this a little smaller so you can see it as I make the change. So now when I switch, you'll see kind of the visual representation of the phase meter. So I go to audio, processes, and invert the phase of the right channel. And you see how this goes very horizontal. When you see horizontal orientation, that means that you're going to have kind of a phasing issue visually. So when I come here, I can now, if I undo that change, we see more vertical. So I redo the processing. So now those 2 channels are out of phase, and we could, as we zoom in on the 2 waveforms, we could see that, as one waveform is going up, that, the other waveform will be going down and thus kind of canceling out. So if I come here, we could see this. When you see a more horizontal orientation, that's when we can see phase problems. And if I want to see what phase problems are on particular frequencies, I think it's the multi-correlation. Here you can see the actual frequencies that are being out of phase. So we can see when I switch that, we'll go back here and I undo the invert phase option on the right channel. So you could hear how the phase is now, and see it visually here where it's more horizontal. And we can see all the frequencies are in phase. And now when I switch it again, half the frequencies are out of phase, and we see this horizontal perspective. So now undo the invert polarity inversion. So that's how you can see. So when you see kind of more vertical orientation on the, and kind of all the channels on like the positive axis of the multicorrelator, that's good. When you're out of phase, you'll see more of a vertical or more of a horizontal perspective, and you'll see kind of red and green in the multicorrelation. So that's how you could kind of determine between the different tools. All right, let's go back to our live stream. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. And if anyone has, we'll be starting our Zoom meetup in maybe about 10 minutes. Okay, so let me just scroll back here. Catch some more questions. Okay, so we just see in the past, I always missed the live stream. Is there any calendar available to see the exact timetable and date? So what we've done for like the last 13 months is every Tuesday and Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern, unless I have some other work obligation. But it's 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. So if you're in Germany, I think it's 7 p.m. Central European time, 6 p.m. in UK. And you can figure out kind of the different time zones. But if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you can get notified of when future live streams are happening automatically. Okay, so it says, hello, Greg. I'm facing this issue where my master fader is heavily distorted. My individual tracks are below minus 12 dB. What is going on? Thanks very much. So, you could, if your tracks here, let's say if I wanted to take, it could be just gain staging and plug-in processing. So let's say if I'm here, we have this one stereo track playing, I could have this down to minus 12 dB, but if you have plugins, that are, let's say I just wanted to put a limiter on it, and you may not see the effects of the plugin depending on the meter setting. So if we click here, we could say, okay, I wanted to, go to my meterings to see, pre-fader, but as you come over here, you could add, different gain structure and distortion along the way. So if you send it to a group and there's, processing on the group, you add gain in the group, that's probably going to be indicative, and if you really want to check the gain structure, try just putting, a test tone on a particular track, come here and say, okay, we want to do my test tone generator. And at this point, I could see, that my test tone is set to minus 12 dB. So where is that going to be throughout the whole signal chain? And you could see exactly, if you have this at 12 dB, minus 12 dB, you could kind of correlate throughout the entire mixer chain, to see exactly where gain is going to be added or not on a particular channel basis. So use like a test generator because what that level is. It's not going to be fluctuating itself. Sometimes, some material may be recorded too loudly that was distorted, and you may have it down, but it's still distorting. Okay, so let's say I think we had a question on the inserts again. So let's see if I can remember the little trick for deactivating. I had to do this recently, help a composer friend of mine. So if I just come here. Okay, so that bypasses them. So we don't want to reset the rack. I'm just trying to remember. But there is like a modifier key to choose to deactivate. And let me just see if it's in the mix console. All right, so I'm going to just come over here and all right, so I see some people are starting to join the Zoom meeting already. We'll be there in just a couple minutes. right, so one way to kind of test this. Just try to remember what the keyboard shortcut is. But I could take a look if you want to send me an email. I could just go through an email because I just walked a composer through it a couple weeks ago. All right, so sorry for my brain cramp. Okay, so I see a question from Vinny Sabatino. I'm stuck Firewire 1 through 2. What's in and out? So it doesn't matter what's in and out. Just take one of your MR816, the one that's connected to your computer. You know, you're going to have one Firewire connection that goes from your computer to your MR816. Take the other connection and connect it to any other Firewire port on your from your MR816 CSX to your MR816X. All right, so Michael Teams wants everyone to hit the like button. So maybe we can see if we get up to 100 likes before we transition to the Zoom. We need 11 more, so if you haven't hit the like button, make sure we do that. All right, so we have a quick question. I want to know more about the tempo detection panel. Does it really equalize all the tempo of the performance so that the game gets smoother? So it doesn't do that. It just detects the tempo, but you can regulate the tempo after the fact once it's been detected. So if I wanted to do that to kind of smooth out the tempo of a particular project, so say if I listen to this, and it's not lining up with the click, I'll come do my tempo detection. Just so I'm gonna just select this, do my tempo detection. So now we have different things, like if it's really radical, you can choose to smooth, or if you need to multiply by 2 or divide, you know, if you're in 12/8 or 3/4, but you could also do like an off-beat correction. So now I have the tempo done. If I wanted to, I could select the file, go to advanced, and say set definition from tempo, which basically embeds all the tempo changes as metadata in the file. And now I could say I want this to be 144 steady without any tempo fluctuations. Or if I wanted natural fluctuations, I could select and just kind of tighten it up or smooth it out, or make it more, have more variation, just like that. So those are different things you could do with the tempo. Okay, so we're gonna just Okay, so we have one last question from Studio Ghost Town. Since he has only one question, how can we assign a hotkey to freeze, track, or instrument? So, what I think is a better option is to consider is just doing a render in place. It gives you kind of the same functionality as freezing, except, gives you the advantage of multiple stages of processing. And also you could do multiple tracks at once and you could assign it from a keyboard shortcut. So I see people always want to freeze like a bunch of VST instrument tracks. Whereas really you may want to just select all the tracks and do a render in place. And then once you do the render in place, you could also just have, different settings. So if I wanted to come here and go to my render in place, you could choose just to, go to your render settings. I wanted to mute these down. I wanted no effects. I wanted the EQs and inserts and channel stripped, or the sends, or the master effects. I wanted to, mute the source tracks or disable the source tracks, so you could do lots of flexibility with, inherently more flexible with the, with the render in place. I like to think of freezing as kind of a 2001 kind of technology era solution, and render in place is more of a 2016 era solution that's a little more advanced. So consider doing that. All right, so I'm going to post the Zoom link one more time here. And then we're going to migrate over to the Zoom. I'm going to get it started on the computer here. Then in a moment, I'll stop the live stream. I want to thank everyone for all the wonderful questions. We hope that everyone has learned something new. And I'll go ahead and get logged into Zoom and start the meeting. I know we have some people that have already joined. So I will start, and you may hear me twice because of my microphone configuration. So just bear with me for a second. So we'll let that get started. And I'm going to admit some people here in the Zoom. Okay, so we see Jan. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, so if people want to go ahead and migrate over, we can, I'll just wait a moment or two for everyone to kind of migrate their way over. All right. And I'm going to let some more people in. All right, so we see Jan has made it. All right. Be there in just a second. It's this world map so we all know where Sweden is. We do a geography lesson. All right, and hey, Jan, how are you? It could be just because I have, I may have like, the live stream still going on. So, all right. So we're going to see if there's, okay. I think soon. So. All right, so for people still in the live stream, I'm just going to paste one more time to make sure that we have the Zoom link. All right, so we have some more people kind of joining. All right, so I'm going to wait a moment and end the live stream, and we'll get started with the Zoom. So if everyone wants to join the Zoom, so it's going to be the meeting ID of 874-313-4342 and a passcode of 101015. And this will be, we're starting this at 3 p.m. on Friday, U.S. Eastern Time. So if you're watching this on a replay, you probably won't be active. But I'm going to end the Zoom. All right. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. All right.